Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Pizza Garage. My name is Leo Spizzirri, and today I'm super excited because I'm going to be sharing a gorgeous recipe with you. This one was on an old YouTube channel of mine, had millions of views. I've gotten so many messages from everybody saying, hey, where did that video go? Well, it's gone. There's nothing we can do about it. But today you're in luck because we are about to make my famous Chicago stuffed pizza recipe. Now, here's the deal. Chicago stuffed pizza started a very, very long time ago, right? The originators of this stuffed pizza were from a restaurant called Nancy's, and Nancy's was a historic restaurant in Chicago. This place was historic. It was a husband and wife team. Nancy Palazzi and Rocco Palazzi started this place out to make pizzas, right? Now, the great thing about Nancy's was that it just happened to be across the alleyway from my grandparents where they lived. So my earliest childhood memories was the smell in the entire neighborhood of this beautiful pizza baking all night long. Cars literally scattered all over the neighborhood because this pizza was so phenomenal. But I want to make one thing very clear to you all. We're not talking about Chicago deep dish. The deep dish pizza and the stuffed pizza are two very different things. And for those of you who are still saying stuffed crust pizza from Chicago, this is not that, right? Stuffed crust is physically taking an edge that's stuffed, rolling it over, and putting sauce and cheese and sticking it in the oven. The deep dish pizza is baked in a pan just like the stuffed pizza, but the difference is the stuffed pizza gets this beautiful lid, all right? It's a layer of dough that sits on top of all the ingredients inside the pizza, and then it gets closed like a pie, right? Now this, if we were to take the origin of this pizza and bridge it all the way back to Italy, this pizza would be found historically in southern Italy, usually around Easter time. We make this Easter calzone, depending on what part of the East Coast or Chicago you grew up with. You might remember your grandparents or maybe your mother or your aunt talking about the famous pizzagena, right? Or filled pizza. Now this pizzagena was stuffed with eggs and mozzarella and onions and olives and sausage and all this beautiful stuff. But what Rocco and Nancy Palazzi did, they took this back to Chicago and they made it their own. They took the fillings out, the eggs, all the stuff that was in there, and they replaced it with tons of mozzarella, right? So before we go any further, we got to talk about the dough. Now, all the doughs that you see on this YouTube channel in the Pizza Garage, I love to give them to you by metric because if you're a home baker and you're going to be tinkering with making doughs, it's really important that you go out and get yourself a digital scale because once we start making these beautiful pizzas together, you're going to come up with something and say, wow, Leo, I made this fantastic pizza, but unfortunately, I used measuring cups and I used tablespoons and my measurements didn't come quite right the next time that I make it, and it didn't come out as good as the first time. The only way that you're going to get consistency as a baker is to go ahead and start weighing out all your ingredients. Today, I'm going to give this to you both ways. You can go into the comment section and in the list of the description of this video, and you'll find all the recipe printed out. So before you go into the comments and say, hey, Leo, where's the recipe? I'm going to tell you, do yourself a favor. Stop the video for 1 second. Go back to the description. Figure out, there's the recipe. This is what I need. Print it out. Write it down. Do what you have to do. And then come back and let's start getting all of our ingredients together. I want you to take this opportunity. Go and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Go to the Pizza Garage, click the little bell, subscribe, give the thumbs up. You're going to get all of my notifications for all of my upcoming videos. Also, if you're on social media, go ahead and follow me at Ask Chef Leo. Ask Chef Leo on Instagram, Ask Chef Leo on YouTube. You'll also find on Instagram a link in my bio with all of the information for my website, leospizzirri.com. You can figure out how to sign up for my website newsletter right there. And I'd love to hear from you folks. Most of you at home have a machine like this, right? This is our KitchenAid mixer, right? Now, the KitchenAid mixer is great because this company and another famous company that we hear about a lot in the restaurant business called Hobart they used to be the same company. The Hobart machine is a planetary style mixer that was created to make things like, in the bakery world, we would use it to make meringues and batters and all kinds of creams and things like that. But it just happened that this had a hook, right? This is called a dough hook, and I'm sure you guys have seen these a lot, right? Dough hook is great because it allows this portion right here, as this turns around the bowl, right? It allows this to grab what's underneath the bowl and kind of fold it in. The problem with the planetary style mixers, and professional bakers have a problem with this, because the bowl is fixed. It doesn't move. So every time this hook turns, it turns against the side of this bowl, and what happens is it's pressing the dough against it, and it's tearing it a little bit. So it's very important that when you make doughs with a machine like this, that you're not overworking the dough, because overworking the dough with this machine will destroy the gluten. We're going to talk about gluten here in a minute, but it's one of the main reasons why we spend so much time working on our doughs. Okay, so now I'm going to give you this beautiful recipe for my Chicago stuffed pizza dough. This pizza dough is great for Chicago stuffed pizza, but if you think that you're going to turn this into a beautiful focaccia, I'm going to be the one to tell you that it's not going to work the way you think it works. Use this for making Chicago stuffed pizza. Now, I got my ingredients already scaled out right here, and I'm going to be talking really quick about flour. The flour that we're going to use today is readily available in the market. This is a brand called King Arthur, and you can literally get this almost anywhere in the United States. On the bag right here, this says that this flour is 11.7% protein. It also says that this is all-purpose flour. Back in the day, we used to use all-purpose flour to make this pizza specifically. All-purpose flour is great because it's not very heavy. 11.7 protein on the scale of all the different types of flour that are out there. 11.7 is kind of considered the mid-weight to low-strength flour. You got to remember, we're not making something that looks like ciabatta bread. So we don't need a lot of strength and a lot of structure to hold the air bubbles. We're making something that actually resembles a biscuit on the inside. It's going to be light and airy, and you're going to see the little bubbles that the yeast creates, but it's not supposed to be something that rises 2-3 inches tall and has that bread-like appearance. This is going to be a very short bite. It's going to be flaky on the outside, and it's going to be the perfect vessel to hold all those beautiful ingredients that you're about to use. Now, why do we use King Arthur? The reason why I'm going to show you this recipe with King Arthur flour is because King Arthur flour also contains barley malt flour. Malted flour is going to do a great job in your home oven of making this pizza look very beautiful and brown on the edges. I know there's a lot of videos out there and a lot of YouTube stuff and a lot of information on the internet. But the one thing that I see consistently is all of you pizzatarians out there that go through and make all these recipes and love to post your stuff on Instagram. I find out that the tops of your pizzas and the bottom of your pizzas look great. But when it comes to the side of the dough, the part that touches the pan, it always looks like it's a little, we say sometimes milk toast or that light beige. And it's not what we're looking for. We want that beautiful caramelized crust on the edge to look the same there as the bottom and the top. And by using a flour that's malted, you're going to get that result. Now, King Arthur flour, awesome. Historically, in Chicago, growing up, I started making pizzas as I was a kid, right? My mother and my grandmother were always in the kitchen. And the one thing that I loved about this is that it was so easy to come together. My grandmother would make this dough early in the morning, and then they'd let it rise, and then by the afternoon, we were eating pizza. It was an awesome thing, right? Because we're using a lighter flour. In Chicago, though, the flour back in the day that we said was the good flour that we would use all the time was another company called Sarasota. If you live in the Midwest, you'll know the Sarasota name, and it was called the good flour because it worked a little bit better than most of the other flours. Now, we didn't know why, but now, as an expert, I'll tell you why. Sarasota flour has a large range of that protein content, which usually is about 11.5 to 12.5% protein, right? We're calling out this King Arthur as 11.7. The reason this is important is because you got to remember, people that were making this stuffed pizza or maybe tavern-style pizza in Chicago, and we have cracker crust, we have all these different types of pizzas in Chicago. You got to remember that these weren't professional dough makers or bread bakers. These were mom and pop operations that were kind of figuring it out as they went. So there was no controls inside of their pizzeria, meaning that it could be the middle of summer, and in Chicago when it's 95 degrees outside, and their back kitchen, usually where their mixer was, that area could have easily been 98, 100 degrees, right? Now, you got to remember, you've got yeast and flour and all this stuff inside the mixer. It wasn't like they were making dough and then taking it out and putting it in the refrigerator right away. That dough would have sat in here. And sometimes, I can remember as a kid, that dough lifting up over the bowl and falling outside. And every time you kind of passed by, you'd kind of just punch it down back into the bowl and let it rise again. Because in a pizzeria, we were in a time where people were working very quickly. We were working at a time when people would just say, you know what, it's just dough. Leave it in the machine. We'll get to it when we get to it. Not thinking, though, that every time this rises and falls, that flour inside is breaking down a little bit because the yeast is working and working aggressively, and it was causing some malfunctions. The reason why we would call out that Sarasota as being the good flour is because the flour had a little bit extra protein, up to 12.5%. So the abusive conditions that we gave it inside of the bowl created this beautiful dough that was still able to be managed by our process. Now, let's get to it. I'm going to give you the recipe. King Arthur flour is what we're using today. You'll see that I have all of my ingredients scaled out right now, okay? Now, the reason why I have everything scaled up is because when I start mixing or when I start baking, I don't want to be running around the kitchen looking for this, grabbing that, because it's causing our process to become longer and longer and longer. And unfortunately, as you guys know, every time you walk away, I'm getting old. Look, I got gray in my sideburns now, right? Every time you walk away, you have that likelihood that you're going to forget something. And one thing as a baker, as a chef, as a home cook that you're going to know, forget the salt one time in anything that you make and you'll never forget it again. Or forget which is your salt and which is your sugar and mix them up and you'll never make that mistake again either, right? So let's get started. Now, I've got here, all of my ingredients are already weighed out. I've got in here all that King Arthur flour is already weighed out. This is 700 grams of King Arthur flour, all purpose, or 5.5 cups of flour, okay? I also have my water is ready to go. This is 315 grams of water. How do we do it? We put a container on the scale. We press tare, T-A-R-E, which makes the container go to 0. So now all we're weighing is what's inside of this container. Fill it up to 315 grams, and this is going to be your weight. Or you can say 1 1/3 cups of water. That's what's in here, right? The next thing I've got is canola oil. Now, I'm going to show you something. Back in the day when we talked about this pizza, it was about what fats were available that we used. If I'm making this pizza for my friends or my family, or those of you that have been fortunate enough to go on the road and catch one of my live demonstrations, or maybe you see me do public appearances at trade shows or all that other great stuff, you'll know that when I do those shows, I don't use the fat that I'm about to show you. I love to go old school and use lard. Use pork lard. Look at the label. Make sure that it's clean. All you want to see is clean fat. If it's got 50 other items behind that ingredient statement, that's not the one you want to get. Usually, if you go to a really good butcher, if you go to a really well-stocked grocery store, you can find clean lard, right? Now, I took a page from my grandmother's book, right? My grandmother, every time she'd cook bacon, right, she'd have a cast iron skillet that was always next to the stove, and there was always a coffee can next to the stove. And all that rendered bacon fat, she'd siphon out, she'd clean it through a sieve or maybe some paper towels, and she'd save it. So anytime she would need a little bit of fat inside of that cast iron skillet, we would use bacon fat. If you try this dough with bacon fat, you're going to get two things here. Number one, you're going to get this beautiful flakiness, just like using lard. That's what it'll give you. But also, you get those beautiful smoky notes of the bacon, which are trapped inside the lard, right? So this is why clean lard, is not bright white like this mixer. Clean lard, if you're using this, bacon fat, if you're using this, it's going to have this little bit of beigeish color. Clean lard, yes, is going to be as white as this mixer. So do yourself a favor, find yourself really clean lard, find yourself some really good bacon grease, render it off yourself, save it, don't throw it in the garbage, and I promise you that's the reward. Now, for all of you out there, before you start putting in the comments, Leo, are you freaking nuts? I'm not using lard, it's bad for you, blah, blah, blah. Guys, let's be real. You're not going to be making yourself stuffed pizzas every single day of the week, right? This is going to be a special occasion when you make this pizza. Do it for yourself, do it for your family. Unless somebody has a dietary restriction where they can't do it, take it out, don't use it. I'm replacing this with corn oil, all right? Corn oil was the fat that towards the mid-'80s, we started seeing a lot of corn oil replacing lard, especially in the pizzerias. Then people started saying, well, we can't use corn oil because that's not so good for you. They replaced it with canola oil. The problem is that as you start going with these different types of oils, you lose a lot of flavor. Corn oil, to me, has a beautiful flavor, and that's what I'm going to use in this recipe. But if you'd like to change this up, when Wolfgang Puck came to the scene, right? We're talking about the late 80s, early 90s. We started seeing olive oil everywhere. Try doing a blend of olive oil and maybe butter. Melt some butter, weigh it out the same way, use the same exact volume that I'm about to give you or weight, and you're going to get this beautiful result. Now, here, I've got corn oil. This is 88 grams of corn oil or a third of a cup of corn oil, right? Then I've got salt. This is kosher salt. You can use kosher salt, sea salt, table salt, use whatever you want. But just please keep in mind that if you switch to table salt, you're going to have to change the amount of salt because it's drastically different. The amount of salt or the volume of salt that we get with table salt as compared to kosher salt. Kosher salt here, I've got about almost 11.5 grams of kosher salt or 2 teaspoons of kosher salt. I love to use kosher salt. Works really well. It's awesome. Try and get yourself some of this, all right? Next, I've got a little bit of sugar, right? The reason I've got sugar in here is because, number one, it's going to help my dough rise. It's going to be that food that the yeast is going to need, right? It's also going to help with some of that browning or the caramelization of that crust. We talked about why we have malt in our flour, but also sugar is going to do that same exact thing, right? It's going to help do two different jobs by adding it in. Sugar is about 7.75 grams and about 1.75 teaspoons. The last thing is our yeast, all right? And this is a lot of yeast. I'm going to tell you it's a lot of yeast. During the pandemic, when everybody was shut down, we had a shortage of yeast because we overuse yeast so much in this country. As I was getting certified and getting all of these different accolades and all these different things from Italy, as I was studying to be a professional pizzaiolo, I learned very quickly how much we overuse our yeast, right? So this is active dry yeast. The active dry yeast is just a hair over 11 grams or 1 1/3 tablespoons. Now, inside of the bowl of my KitchenAid mixer, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with my water. Now, with my water inside of the bowl, the next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add my sugar. I'm going to sprinkle my sugar inside of the bowl. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to add that yeast inside of the bowl. Now, we're using active dry yeast. If you remember your mother, your grandmother using active dry yeast, this is the one that we would have put in the warm water, we would have dissolved it, and we would have waited about 10 minutes for it to start getting all foamy inside, right? Now, because we're going to make this dough a little bit differently, the advantage to you is that you're going to have more control of your process. So what I'm going to do is I'm using cold water, and I'm putting that active dry yeast with the sugar in the water. I'm going to let it rest in here for maybe about 30 seconds. We can whisk the active dry yeast inside of this water. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pour all of my flour into the bowl. Now, all of my flour is in here. And what we've done is we're creating a layer of separation between the yeast and the sugar that's in the water. We've got a barrier of flour. And then the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to take my salt and sprinkle it on top. Now, my grandmother used to argue with me all the time and say, Leo, you cannot mix salt and yeast together because the salt is going to kill the yeast. I'm going to tell you that it doesn't kill it. What it does is it slowly dehydrates it. Think about if you ever saw maybe a prosciutto being cured or a soppressata being cured, right? What happens is that salt is pulling moisture from inside of that meat and preserving it. This is also the same thing that happens with our yeast. By pulling the moisture out of the yeast, it makes it less active and it works not as strong as when we had it. What we're doing is we're putting a barrier between the two, and this will be perfect. Now, I'm going to put my bowl back onto my mixer. See if I can do this backwards here. Clip it in. Now, my dough hook is going to go on. I'm going to make sure this is in place. I'm going to lift the bowl. And then I'm going to start this on the first speed. My mix is going. The dough is starting to come together. And slowly, the water and the flour are blending together. That yeast is getting stirred in. That salt is getting stirred in. But we don't want to forget about our oil. So as the bowl is the mixer is working and the hook is spinning, I'm going to very slowly start to add my oil into this. I want to make sure that the oil has a chance to get inside without it kind of tearing and making everything too loose. These small little additions are going to make a big deal. Now, there's not a lot of water in this. This stuffed pizza dough is very dry. So you'll hear my machine is whining a little bit because it's making a very tight, dense dough. Very similar to making a biscuit. In this process, the manufacturer suggests that whenever you use a dough hook, don't ever go over the second speed. In our case, we're not going to go into second speed. We're going to mix this entire dough on the first. I've got this last little bit of oil that's going to go into here right now. My total mix time here is probably going to be somewhere about 5 to 6 minutes. All of my oil is in. Now, as my dough is mixing, I've got a rubber spatula, and I want to scrape the sides and the bottom of my bowl. This is really important because this is a very dry dough, and I want to make sure that everything that's inside of the mixer here is going to be mixed very homogeneously. I don't want to leave a lot of these dry bits on the bottom. So by taking this rubber spatula, this is going to ensure that everything is kind of in the game, right? Now my dough is coming together very quickly. And like I was telling you, I would rather that you undermix the dough a little bit than overmix it, because we're going to let this dough rest for about 15 minutes, and then we're going to come back to it and we're going to finish the steps, and I'm going to tell you what we're going to do with it from here. As I'm looking at this, I can see that the dough is almost mixed. I want to get it to the point so that we just barely see a little bit of dry flour in here. This is a really good indication that the dough is not overmixed. It's also a really good indication that our mixer is not going to burn out. This looks great. I'm going to stop my machine. I'm going to bring this bowl down. I'm going to remove the hook. And let's check out our dough. I'm going to turn my dough out onto this bench here, right? If you look at the dough, the bowl, it's nice and clean on the inside. This is exactly what we're looking for. I'm looking at the dough that we created, and I do see just barely a little bit of that flour, which is perfectly fine, which means that we didn't overwork our dough. You can see that the dough is still soft, right? And this is what we're looking for. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my dough, and the process of us kneading our dough, anytime we knead dough, we're going to try to take this dough as it is, fold the front forward, and then with the back parts or the heels of our palms, we're going to push forward and roll back. Push forward, and we're going to roll back. We're going to do this a few times until we got something that kind of looks like a kind of a shaggy burrito, I guess. We're going to take this, turn it sideways. We see the seam, which was the action of me rolling, and I'm going to do this the same way in the opposite direction. What we're doing is we're folding now those gluten strands. If you remember, if you've ever made biscuits from scratch, right? Breakfast biscuits. If you come from the UK, we're not talking about the same kind of biscuits, right? Breakfast biscuits in the States, and we undermix those. We let them rise and do their thing. We cut them and we bake them, and they come beautiful, light, and flaky. And that's what I'm doing. So now our dough like this is done. I've got a good, nice sized ball, right? I'm going to take this. We can stick this inside of our bowl, cover this with plastic wrap, and we need to rest for 15 minutes before we do anything. This gives me the perfect time to show you the next step. We got to make our pizza sauce. I'm using ground tomatoes. You're going to need to get yourself a bowl because all of our ingredients are going to go into this bowl. I'm going to take the tomatoes and I'm going to pour them right into the bowl. And you can see ground tomatoes work really well. It's got the right viscosity, we would call this, right? It's the right thickness. And you got to remember that this pizza is going to bake in the oven for about 25-30 minutes. So we need something that's maybe a little bit thicker, right? A little bit heartier, and it's going to bake on top of this pizza and create the perfect texture to go along with the stuffed pizza, right? So I got this in here, and the smell of these tomatoes is phenomenal. Now, this is a 28-ounce can. A 28-ounce can of ground tomatoes is what you need. I'm also going to be using tomato paste. Tomato paste usually comes in these small cans, right? But the problem is that when you get one of those small cans, you open it up, what do you do with the rest of the tomato paste that's inside the can? You got to figure out a way to store it. It's a pain. I love to use the tomato paste that comes in these tubes like this. Looks like a tube of toothpaste, right? But it's not. This is tomato paste inside of a tube. This is 4.5 ounces of paste. Now, depending on how thick you like your sauce, you could use 4 to 4.5 ounces of paste. I'm going to use this entire tube. You could also figure out it's about a half a cup of tomato paste that we're looking for. When you use these tubes, they got this kind of screw cap, just like the toothpaste, but they're sealed here. It's closed. The top of the cap has like this little pin, right? So you just take this like this, push it in, give it a twist, and then all of a sudden, we're open here. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to roll this out just like this. I'm going to put this down into my sauce. And the beautiful thing about tomato paste, this is very concentrated. And this one is called doppio concentrato, right? Or double concentrated. We love to use tomato paste because it gives our sauce a lot of complexity. The sweetness of that tomato paste is what really works the magic inside over here, right? So the next thing that I've got, I'm going to put some olive oil, right? Olive oil, I'm doing about 1/4 cup. This is 1/4 of a cup measure. I'm going to put my oil right here in front of you guys. My next ingredient is garlic. I'm going to use fresh garlic in this. I love fresh garlic on the Chicago-style stuffed pizza because it gives us this beautiful, robust flavor. And that garlic in this sauce, I promise you, when you make this pizza at home, it's going to fill up this house with the most incredible perfume that you'll ever believe, right? Make it and put a comment below and tell me you don't agree with what I'm telling you. Now, with our garlic, I'm using 2 cloves of garlic and I'm chopping them. So my 2 cloves of garlic, this is going to go inside here just like this. My next ingredient is salt. I'm using kosher salt here. My kosher salt, this is about 1/2 of a tablespoon. I'm going to push this right in. Next, I've got dry oregano. My dry oregano here, this is about 1/2 a tablespoon. I'm going to put this right in here as well. If you want to try to use fresh herbs, it's great. But the problem that I have using fresh herbs for this pizza is that it's going to bake inside of this oven for about 30 minutes. So we see a lot of discoloration on fresh herbs. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to put any at all, because the last ingredient that I have is my fresh basil. I'm going to take 3 beautiful leaves of fresh basil. I'm going to kind of fold them in half. I'm going to smash them inside of my fist. And what's happening is now the essential oils from inside of these leaves are getting bruised, right? And inside, all those essential oils are popping from outside the cells. And all of a sudden, everything just smells like beautiful, fresh basil out of the garden in the middle of August. And it's like a beautiful thing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hand tear this. And literally, if you want to use a knife, go ahead and use a knife. I just, again, like my grandmother used to do, I'm just going to kind of pinch it and pull it. And it's going to tear off. And then it's going to be perfect inside of here. This is the only fresh herb that I'm going to use. You could go ahead and replace the dry herbs for fresh if you'd like. Everything now is inside of my bowl. I'm going to use a whisk and I'm going to start to stir this. The objective here now is that as we continue to stir this, all of those ingredients are going to be blended really homogeneously. How long do we stir this for? We're going to stir this to the point where the olive oil is kind of incorporated into the sauce, and we see no more pools of olive oil, but we see like this beautiful shimmer on the top of it. And this is going to mean that our sauce is ready to go. You can do this step a day in advance so that you don't have to do everything the same day if you don't want to. But there's always that little bit of time between us making the dough and dividing and all the other things that we're doing. So you do have plenty of time. I like to talk about the dough as a dough that I make a day in advance as well. And we're going to talk about that here in a second because my sauce is ready to go. This amount of dough is going to make one 12-inch stuffed pizza, okay? And I'm going to show you some tricks now with this dough. What we're going to do, I'm going to take a flat edge scraper, or you might call this a bench scraper, right? You don't have to use a scale for this. Just take the dough, cut it right down the middle into 2 pieces. In the time that it took to make our pizza sauce, you can see that our dough now is beautiful. It's elastic. I don't see any more of those dry bits of flour. Everything has been absorbed, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of just fold this, the edges into the middle, and I'm going to make a ball. This ball, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a couple containers. These are resealable containers. And I'm going to put 1 ball into each container. Put the lid on it. I'm going to repeat this step with the second dough ball. Kind of fold the edges in onto each other and then just pinch it all closed from the bottom. See how I did that? Now I got a beautiful smooth dough ball on top. Press it down flat and I'm going to stick it inside here to rise. Okay? Now, put a little bit of olive oil in here. Put a little bit of nonstick spray if you'd like. But because this dough is pretty dry, tomorrow or in a few hours when you come back to use it, you'll see that this ball will remove very easily from the container. Take these, seal them closed, and stick them inside your refrigerator until you're ready to use them. I'm ready to start stretching out my dough, and there's a couple things that we need to discuss before we move any further. We need to talk about pizza pans. The pizza pans that we use in Chicago are very specific pans. These are very heavy. This is an old pan. I've got a bunch of these pans that have to be at least 30 years old. And these are just like cast iron skillets. They're not very easy to find. The more you use them, the better they get, the more non-stick they become. So what we're going to do, I've got this pan. This, again, is very old. This is what's called a tin-on-steel pan. The pan is 12 inches. It's 2 inches high. I've also got another pan, which is much newer, that hasn't had as much time of seasoning, right? And you'll see the difference in the color. But again, these are both the same kind of pans. We call these tin on steel, heavy gauge, right? You might see them between 14 to 16 gauge on the metal. There are a few different sources if you search through Amazon and different places online to find these. If you're going to make stuffed pizza, these work awesome, right? There's also another kind of pan to be aware of. This pan here is what's called hard-coated anodized. These pans do not require any seasoning. They're made of a certain type of metal that's naturally non-stick and works just like these pans here. The pan is much lighter and doesn't require any seasoning. The great thing about this type of pan is that when they come out of the oven, these cool very quickly as compared to these heavy steel pans. Because I have one of these steel pans in house, I'm going to use this one for our pizza. But if you go online, you can find sources for these on Amazon, and there's a lot of different manufacturers that make hard-coated anodized pans, and you could find these very easily on the internet. In order to get ready to start making our pizza, we need to prepare our dough. The dough is going to be rolled out very thin, but I need a place to put it. So we're going to prepare our pizza pan now. This step is pretty critical because this is what's going to give us a lot of that light, flaky outside. And a lot of people think that there's butter always inside the dough, but it's not. It's inside of the pan. You can also switch out butter for things like lard, shortening, bacon fat. Be creative. But I'm going to do one really special today, and I showed this in the last YouTube video that's not there anymore. Everybody loves it, and I love it too, so I'm going to show you another thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my butter just like this, and I'm going to kind of go around inside of this pan, and I'm going to coat this very well with this butter. Now, my butter is pretty cold, right? Because as this goes in here, I want that fat to remain solid, right? By the fat remaining solid, what's going to happen is it's going to stay in place until the point where it goes into the oven, which means that it's going to help stick to the dough, right? So I'm going to make sure I come all the way around the sides and the edges. I got my gloves on, like I said, because this gets a little bit messy, right? And unless you don't mind it, I don't mind it. I just figure that it's a nice hygienic way to do it, right? So again, I'm kind of just smearing this all around through the pan. I want you to get into the corners. Now, before I can hear the husband right now. Hey, Mary, he said use the corners in a round pan, right? What are we talking about? We're talking about the edge between the side wall and the bottom of the pan, right? I'm going to take this. Just make sure we get all the way into those edges or the corners of this pan. Now that my pan has been greased, I'm going to take a little bit of Parmesan cheese. This could be Parmesan, this could be Romano, this could be semolina, this could be panko breadcrumbs. It could be anything that you want. Just remember that whatever is now going into this pan, it's going to stick to the side of the dough. And the reason why I like to use this Parmesan cheese inside of here is because it's almost like we flour the inside of a cake pan, right? When we make a cake, right, before we put the batter, we put a little bit of that flour on the inside. And what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of working around the edge just like this. and you'll see that that excess just goes to where it's got to go. It sticks to that butter, and then whatever is left over just falls right out. And you'll see that all of a sudden, I've got this perfectly dusted pan with Parmesan cheese. Now, if you've ever done any kind of cooking in a pan, right, you'll know that if we put Parmesan cheese on the inside of this pan, we're going to create this kind of frico crust, they call it. We hear that terminology a lot when we do Detroit-style pizza, and it's going to give us that flaky, cheesy bite on the edge of this pizza, which is phenomenal. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to clean up my mess, and we're going to be ready to roll out our dough. Now that my dough is ready to roll out, I had my dough sitting in the refrigerator for 24 hours in those containers, and you can see how much it's risen. This is beautiful because all we have to do now is just take this out. This dough will literally just pop out, and it'll come together just like this. I've gone ahead and I've made this a little flatter now, which is going to make it easier for me to roll out. We've got 2 dough balls because one of the doughs is going to be for the bottom layer, and the other dough ball is going to be for the top layer. So the first thing that I'm going to need, I've got some yellow flour here. This is semolina that's been twice ground, called semola rimacinata, to be double ground. I'm going to take this dough just like this. I'm going to put it right inside of my flour. I'm going to give this a turn just to kind of dredge that dough. And I'm going to keep this flour nearby. Put a little bit here, maybe a little bit extra on the table. And I could feel that this dough is actually beautiful and light and airy, which is exactly what we want to see. I'm going to use my rolling pin to do this. In the restaurant world, commercially, we'd have this medieval torture device that has these 2 metal rollers that we pass the dough through, and we pass it through again until it gets thin and thin and thin, until it goes to the point where we can stick it in our pan. We're looking for this dough to be about a 1/4 inch thick, right? So go ahead, figure it out on your own, get a little tape measure, and you'll be just fine. But we're looking for about a 1/4 inch thick for the size that we need inside the pan. When I roll with a rolling pin, I start in the middle of the dough and I move forward, right? I turn this 1/4 of the way, go into the middle, and always roll forward. Turn it a 1/4 and roll forward. Now, if you continue to roll the dough like this, in this method, 1/4 of a turn at a time, turning and then continue to roll, you're not only going to have a beautiful round pizza, but you're also going to not see a lot of that snapping back that we do. I'm going to put a little bit of extra flour just like this. And now I can kind of get a little aggressive. You're using a beautiful worktop here, this wooden worktop. Inside, I'm out in the pizza garage, so it's a little bit humid out here right now. I'm going to put a little bit more flour on the top. If you notice that the dough is sticking to the rolling pin, this is usually what the problem is. You can see now with very little work how large this is getting. I'm going to take this, just like we did before, turn it a 1/4, and I'm going to do this work back and forth until I get to that point where I've got that 1/4 inch thickness. Don't be too concerned if you see that this is maybe just a hair thicker on the edge than in the center, because I want you to focus on the center of this, because whatever's on the outer edge is going to hang over the sides of the pan, and that's going to be the trim that we're going to take off. So we're not going to see this. I'm more concerned about what's in the center. Now, this dough is definitely large enough for this pan, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift the dough onto one hand. Did you see the way I did this? Lift it onto one hand. I'm going to bring my pan in front of me, and then using my arms, I'm going to lay this from the front of me down into the pan, okay? And if I did my job right, I can go ahead and just kind of rearrange this dough to where it's got to go. I'm going to straighten it out so that there's no edges hanging over and I don't see a lot of large creases. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start feeling in the center of the pan. The center of the pan is more important than the sides, because the sides, when we get up here, have a little bit more dough that's going to make that edge thick enough to where we need it to be. but the bottom of the dough is what's holding this all together, and it's what's going to help you remove the pizza from the pan when we get to that point. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time just making sure that the bottom is nice and flat, and then I'm going to take the dough, I'm lifting it. Can you see the way I'm doing this? I'm lifting this, and then I'm just coming with my hands up onto the edge, and I'm going to press the dough into the side of the pan where that cheese is, right? And this should lay just beautifully and continue to stick into the pan. I'm going to do this all the way around, and the thing that I'm going to be searching for, I'm lifting and pushing, and the thing that I'm going to be looking for is that there's no air bubbles. Now, as I look at this pan, I've got this one edge right here, which is just a little bit shorter than the rest that's hanging off the side. This is not a problem. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my hand, press it into the edge of the pan, or that corner where the bottom meets the side. I'm going to pull, and I'm just going to take this, and I'm going to pull a little bit over the top. Now, this is ready for the bonus round. This is where we decide what type of pizza that you're going to make, right? So what I'm going to do is, first of all, we need to get ready our mozzarella. We need to get ready the rest of our ingredients. What I'm going to be doing is my favorite stuffed pizza, Italian sausage and pepperoni. So in order to get ready to do these, I need to prep these ingredients just a little bit more, and I'm going to show you how to finish them here now. I've got everything ready to go. My dough is inside the pan. I've got my Italian sausage in front of me just like this. What I did, I took, and I'm using the Italian sausage outside of the casing. I've got these little beautiful sausages, right? These came from my favorite Italian little butcher shop. This is Italian sausage. We call this sweet sausage, sweet fennel sausage. If you like to use the hot variety, go ahead and use that. What I did was I took a knife. I went and made a slit down the casing just like this. And then all the meat that's on the inside here, I pull this out and stick this right in here just like this. All right. Now, again, the type of variety of sausage is up to you. If you don't like to use Italian sausage, if you got a problem with pork, there's a lot of people who have different dietary restrictions and that sort of thing. Go ahead and use whatever you can use. You could fill this up with vegetables, spinach, peppers, onions, whatever you like. Just remember that if the pepper or the onion, which have a lot of water, are not cooked a little bit beforehand, you're going to have a very watery interior of your pizza. So do yourself a favor. Give yourself a little quick saute of those peppers and onions and mushrooms and whatever else you like, or roast them in the oven a little bit, and then stick them in. They'll be just fine. I'm going to take a knob of this Italian sausage, just like this, and then I'm going to pinch the sausage, press it with my 2 fingers till it's about the size of a quarter, and then press it down onto the dough. And you're going to see that this is going to stick. Now, the beautiful thing about this stuffed pizza, and even when we get to the deep dish pizza on the next video, you're going to be able to see that our bake time is 25 minutes on these things. So I'm not too worried that we're using raw Italian sausage inside over here, because the pizza has plenty of time to bake and it has plenty of time to cook the sausage that's raw on the inside, this raw bulk. Now you notice that what I'm doing here, I'm just going to kind of go around and I'm pinching. I always start from the front and work to the back, right? This goes back to my professional pizzaiolo days. To top a pizza correctly, we always start with the part that's away from us, because we always seem to be a little heavier topped, or the part that we look down at. So we start here and work our way back. We know we used enough, right? So now this is what I'm doing. I'm going to go around. Use as much or as little as you like. I really love Italian sausage, and I think that in this style of pizza, again, the Jon Stewarts of the world calling this a casserole or a hot tub and all this different stuff. I just think that this is going to have a lot of cheese in here, guys. We know there's going to be a lot of cheese in here. But I think that if we have all of these beautiful toppings, now we're creating this perfect bite of pizza that, yes, you're going to need to use a knife and a fork on this. Unless you cool it a little bit, cut it, and you'll be able to hold it. But generally, this is one of those pizzas that's going to be a little bit heavier, right? We eat a lot of stuffed pizzas when people come into town, right? I lived in Chicago, born and raised all my life. And we only go really for stuffed pizza when we've got visitors and they want to have Chicago-style pizza. My pizza right now is looking like it's amazing. Okay, the next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to take off my gloves. I'm going to show you the inside of this pan. You see this? How beautiful? Now, this has the right amount of sausage. The next thing to this is our mozzarella. Okay? Now, this mozzarella over here, this is a blend of whole milk and part skim mozzarella. Okay? This is ground or shredded mozzarella. And what I'm looking to do, I'm really looking to pack this in here. This pizza, 12-inch pizza, is probably going to have close to 3 pounds of cheese. Those of you watching this video from Italy and from Europe and all those, yes, we are talking nearly 2 kilos of mozzarella inside over here. And you'll see that the way that I'm putting this in here, I'm not pressing it down. I'm just kind of feathering it around, getting it to where it wants to go, right? And before I start seeing all the comments about the cardiologist, and hey, you're a chubby kid from Chicago making pizzas, and if you ate a little bit less cheese, guys, believe me, I heard it. My wife tells me all the time. But we're not eating this every single day, so do what you love, right? I've got my sausage on the bottom. I've got the mozzarella on top. If I was going to add any kind of vegetables, I would add them to the top layer here, right? Now, our pan is ready for the next phase, which is our top layer of dough. So we need to go ahead and we're going to stretch one more dough. Now, with the top layer, we don't have to worry about this dough reaching down to the bottom of the pan and up the sides. We only need it to go over the top. So this looks like it's right at about the right size, right thickness. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this here, and I'm going to give you a pro tip. This is really important, guys. My dough has now started to dry out here. If I try to take this dough and put it directly here on the edges, what's going to happen is it's not going to seal right. It's not going to stick because I got a dry part and a dry part touching, and it's going to kind of fall apart a little bit, right? So what we want to do is we want to wet this. So what I just happen to have is some of that beautiful pizza sauce that we made, right? I'm going to take a couple fingers, and I'm going to just kind of spread this around the side right onto the edge of the dough. This is going to be just a little bit of humidity, a little bit of moisture to make sure that this top layer of dough sticks and it seals very nicely. And again, this could be water, this could be anything that you want. I just figured that I've got the sauce right here available next to me, and it's a really easy way to do this, right? I'm just going to go all the way around the edge just like this, okay? And now I've got the sides of this dough that are just a little bit tacky. Don't worry if it goes over the sides, not a big deal. Now, my dough and my pizza are ready to come together as one. I'm going to take my dough that I just stretched out, and I'm going to use the same method. I'm going to lay the dough flat on top of the pizza. I'm trying not to overlap it. I'm going to give it a little bit of slack, and then I'm lightly pressing on the top, right? So that I can lift and let the dough kind of fall into the nooks and crannies as it goes around, just like this, right? Now, at this point, you might say to yourself, man, this looks like the most beautiful pie I've ever seen. Well, guess what? The first thing that I told you when we started this video is that we're making a pie that was traditionally eaten in Sicily around Easter time. It would be the same exact way as this. I'm going to take the flat part of my fingers. I'm going to put them down onto the side, and then with my thumb, I'm pushing, right? So I'm pushing to the side of the pan closed, and I'm going in all the way around the circle, kind of overlapping and pressing where my fingers were. You're going to be able to feel now where that dough feels a little bit thicker and a little bit thinner, and you're going to be able to do this very uniformly all the way around. Now, I'm going to go through, just kind of check my work, make sure I'm nice and uniform all the way around just like this, which way I am. And now, the top of this is like a pillow because there's air trapped in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my fingers, and I'm going to kind of pretend like I'm snapping. Like we snap like this, right? I'm going to use my index finger and my thumb and just kind of pinch the dough and cut a little hole, right? I'm going to make a few of these all the way around. Because these little holes that I'm creating here, are going to do something very important. First of all, they're going to allow the steam that's inside of this pizza to release out, right? It's also going to allow that sauce to kind of seep in just a little bit, right? And it's going to give us this very beautiful homogeneous type of bake once this goes into the oven. Now, in front of me, I've got that pizza sauce that we just made, and I've got a good ladle. A pizza this size, we're probably going to use maybe 2 to 3 ladles of sauce. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a ladle, kind of spread it on one side, take another ladle, I'm going to spread it on the other side. And then using this ladle, I'm just going to kind of spin a little bit, turn, so that I'm getting this sauce around the edges to where it needs to go, right? The one thing that I don't want to see any little white streaks. So wherever you see a little white streak, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to just put a little dab of sauce right there. Now, this is the coolest part of this pizza. I'm going to take this pan, I'm going to lift it up, and I'm going to kind of give this a little shake. And the sauce is going to go wherever it's got to go, right? Now that everything is in here and I've got that weight pressing this down, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get a really sharp knife, right? And I'm going to press the knife on the top of the pan, and I'm going to kind of make this turn all the way around and just trim this dough nice and clean all the way around the edge. Take off my slack, and you'll see how beautiful now this is. This is the whole point of doing this process that we just did. Now, I'm going to give you guys the bonus round. If you loved that video that I did back in 2017, this is going to be the bonus round that I never showed you back then. I'm going to put this to the side, and I'm going to show you probably one of the greatest Amazon finds that I've ever found, right? At home, I'm dealing a lot with people around me in my family that are elderly that no longer can hold a knife, right? Came to the point where I was trying to buy pepperoni one day, and all I could get was these sticks of pepperoni. Problem is that I had some people in my family that couldn't cut and slice pepperoni anymore. So I started searching around, and I found this thing that kind of looks like one of those cutters to make nice straight edges to cut paper. But this is not. This is actually made to slice different kinds of salumi and hard cheeses, right? And I love it. All I'm going to do is I set the thickness here, and then I'm going to take this, I'm going to lift this up. There's this guard right here. And I'm going to make just these little slices all the way down. And all of a sudden, I can slice a stick of pepperoni or maybe some soppressata or anything else that we like that we're going to find at the deli that they normally have to slice for you. And I'm going to do it on my own. And all of a sudden, I've got these beautiful uniform little coins, which I've got right here. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to use them. My pepperoni is ready. I'm going to show you this beautiful method for putting pepperoni on. This type of pepperoni is referred to now in the pizza world as cup and char. So this pepperoni has a casing, collagen casing, which is natural. And what happens is as it cooks, the collagen tightens up and makes this beautiful little pepperoni cup that holds the pepperoni juice, right? The little bit of that fat that comes out of the pepperoni, that grease, that oil, what we love about a pepperoni pizza, it kind of holds it into that cup. And then whatever's sitting up on top raises up and then gets really crispy around the edges. So this is the type of pepperoni that I'm using. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start adding pepperoni to this, making sure that I overlap the pepperoni onto the one that was previously laid down. By doing this, what's going to happen is this pepperoni is going to curl up almost like a rose or a beautiful flower. And this is a beautiful way to serve a stuffed pizza. And we don't see this a lot right now. This is something that I've been showing off a little bit to my friends and family. Everybody loves it. I guarantee that when you show it to yours, they're going to love it too. My pepperoni is on top of this pizza. It's looking gorgeous. Inside is full of all that beautiful hand-pitched Italian sausage. I've got all of that lovely mozzarella inside. A nice sheet of dough on top. My beautiful tomato sauce that I just made. And all of this pepperoni. I'm not exaggerating, guys. This weighs about 8 pounds right now. It's going to be a belly buster. You're not going to try to eat this thing by yourself, folks. You're going to share this with your friends and family. If you can make it to eat more than 2 slices of this, please put a note in my comments because I want to know and I want to say hello to you. You're my hero. The last thing that we're going to do, I'm going to take some of that Parmesan cheese and I'm going to sprinkle this just like this on top. We're ready now to stick this pizza inside of the oven. My oven has been preheated to 475 degrees. A pizza this size is going to take somewhere between 25 to 30 minutes to bake. I'm going to go ahead and stick this inside the oven. And then when I come back, I'm going to show you the most gorgeous Chicago stuffed pizza made at home. Stick around, folks. Okay, guys, I'm so excited. The Pizza Garage smells amazing, and that stuffed pizza is ready to come out. I can't wait for you to see it. There's a couple tools that you're going to need. First of all, this is called a pan gripper. This is a pan gripper to grab the edge of the pan and lift it. I told you that this pan is going to weigh about 8 pounds when it's done. So I'm going to reach into one side, clip it here, and then with this spatula, I'm going to get underneath, and I'm going to drop the pizza. It's ready to come out of the oven. Check it out. Guys, will you look at this? Will you look at this? We're going to get this out of the pan right now, and I'm going to show you what we're going to do next. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of run my knife around the edge. Make sure that it's not sticking anywhere. It shouldn't be sticking, but we just want to make sure that it's going to release really nicely. I'm going to come underneath the pizza just like this and pop it out just like that. Now, my pan is nice and clean. My pizza is sitting right here. The first thing that I see all around this edge, can you hear that? That beautiful caramelized cheese that's now stuck to the edge of the pan. This is what I was telling you earlier about selecting the right flour, about putting the ingredients together in the pan the right way to get this beautiful, amazing pizza. We use a cheese knife in Chicago, kind of like this giant machete to cut down into this. A pizza this size, we would cut into 6 or 8 slices. I'm going to find, my trick is usually to find anywhere on the edge where we might have a little crack. In my case, we don't have any cracks. It's beautiful, solid, put together beautifully. I'm going to come just like this on the edge of the dough, and I'm going to cut right down the middle into this, onto the edge. And then I'm going to press it together so nothing oozes out. I'm going to find where my next position, so I cut from 12 to 6. Now I'm going to cut from 9 to 3. Oh, how beautiful this is. Now, let's cut my last slice. I'm going to cut through from here, just like this. You ready? Oh, that beautiful mozzarella, just like this. I'm going to come down to the side just like here. Look at this. It's oozing all through the sides, down the edge, all over the place in the Pizza Garage. Folks, this is what it's all about. Look at that beautiful mozzarella cheese. I can taste the rendered bacon, the pork fat from that sausage. That beautiful, beautiful pepperoni on top. Guys, this is what it's all about. If you want to make Chicago stuffed pizza, go ahead, use my recipe, do it just the same way I did it, and I promise you the results are going to be phenomenal. Until next time, my name's Leo Spizzirri, and I'll see you soon in the Pizza Garage. Ciao, guys.